there's
guardian.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules, regulations when it comes to children or minors on set. It might be a minor release, but it could be a major problem. This is Understanding NDAs and the 5 most used types of releases. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Brandon Diet. I am a producer for film and television.
And I am Gabrielle Pickle, and I am a line producer and producer for film.
Yeah, so we produce things. So if this is the first time that you are watching with us, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because the more action that we get on this video, the more likely we're going to put out more content. NDAs, what are they? Let's talk about them.
All right. NDA, short for non-disclosure agreement, is typically something, honestly, I think I've received on every single project, including short films, because it is establishing who has the rights to share the information about the project, specifically the proprietary information, story, actors, sets, all of it.
Photo shoots, commercials, reality TV, documentary series, sometimes even broadcast news, episodic television, sitcoms, independent film, you name it, any type of media, you're more than likely going to encounter an NDA. It's probably the first thing that you fill out first form.
And it could be a separate document, its own thing. There are also times when it is a part of your crew deal memo. If you're getting an actual deal memo, it might be a whole section in that document, that contract. Make sure you read it. Make sure you understand the parameters and the seriousness. Typically, you can estimate the seriousness of the NDA by the length of it. They are all serious. But when you get a 400-page one from Disney, you don't take any pictures or talk about anything ever.
Nope. So understanding the ins and outs, what does an NDA actually do? So it basically stipulates the confidentiality, what you can and cannot speak about, and to whom you can and cannot speak to.
Yeah.
It also identifies protection, so copyright protection, protection about story information, people's information, so crew numbers, email addresses, contacts, also cast, talking about who is in the cast. And this goes across, speaking to friends and family as well, because you never know situations. So you could tell your aunt, your uncle, yeah, I'm working on this movie. And they get really excited. They tell their friends, who tells their friends, who tells their friend, who ends up
at a local news reporter.
Yeah. And it's oh, I'm going to go ahead and pass on this information. So-and-so is starring in it, and this is happening. And you're not supposed to give out that information to anybody. And in fact...
Did you have this happen?
Okay. I had this happen on a shoot where there was a specific scene that was being filmed. It was kind of like the big moment of the series, right? And in fact,
the big reveal.
This was the big reveal for not only just that season or that episode or anything. We're talking about over 5 seasons of a show. This was the big moment. And somebody talked to the press. So that person and they weren't even giving that much information, but they said that the reveal was going to happen. This specific thing, there's advertising dollars attached to it. We're talking about a lot of it was important.
Yeah.
Nobody was supposed to talk about. We all knew, but it was just something that somebody thought, the press has come to me and asked, oh, is this specific thing happening? We're filming that today, or we filmed that yesterday. Can't remember exactly what the timing was within it, but that piece ended up running the next day.
While we were still working.
While we were still working, telling the entire world what was about to happen. So, we had to do a lot of damage control
and what
to the press, and that person was immediately released. I know that there was some legal action taken. I was not part of the legal action, so I don't know anything about it. And in fact, Everything that I'm talking about right now, none of which violates any NDAs, because I have not talked about the actual production, who the person is, what the reveal was, where it was, when it was, anything like that. But the general idea is that somebody on one of my sets violated their NDA, and there were a lot of consequences. So speaking of the consequences of the NDA, what are some things that could happen potentially if somebody violates the NDA? And a violation could be many things.
Firing usually happens, and it's usually there's nothing even the production can necessarily do about it because it goes to legal so quickly. I've seen multiple PAs take a picture of somebody without their permission, cast member, director, etc., and be fired for it. And whether I agree with it or not, my hands are tied. Like, it becomes a legal issue at that point. So that is very much one thing that can happen. It often, NDA violations go directly to legal. And when legal gets involved, they can do like anything from a cease and desist letter to like full-on civil litigation, which is terrifying and also expensive. You can also, find yourself blacklisted from that studio completely. And then as those people kind of move to other jobs, they may keep in mind that blacklist and like make sure they're not going to take a chance on hiring you again if you were the one that, violated that on a different show. It's just too big of a risk. Now, I have seen PAs that did get fired for taking a picture of someone that they absolutely did not have permission to take a picture of. They were released. They will never work for that network ever again. But they are doing fine working for other networks and other things. It's not necessarily a death sentence, but it is something I absolutely would not risk. It is the fastest way to get yourself out of a job.
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on what the violation is. So, for instance, if one of the big things is don't take any pictures while you're on set, and you happen to take a picture while you're on set, it doesn't show anything that is proprietary to it, but the rule is don't take any pictures on set, period. So you end up getting released from that. More than likely, it'll just be a little stain on your resume, not as much as like being completely blacklisted. But for instance, if you take a script and you post it somewhere, or you release it out there, or you talk about it to somebody, and this information is not out to the public yet, I mean, you could be sued.
Yeah,
for
why not watermark scripts so that they can track when they are released. Who released it. They are fired. It is not fun.
Yeah, and because of the severity and the seriousness of these situations, oftentimes the producers or whoever is in charge, they're going to remember. And like for me, I remember
a lot of extra work.
I remember every single time somebody has violated an NDA in my career. Only been 3 times. So that over a 30-year period, that's really not terrible, but that one that I had mentioned was a pretty serious one. That's really, really important, is just understanding, line by line, looking over your NDA and reading it about the specifics, like what you can and cannot speak about, to whom you can and cannot speak about these things too. But, for instance, picture taking. That is a very normal thing that happens on set. I have friends of mine that, obviously work in various departments, but costume department, they're proud of the work that they've done, and they, want to show, that they've been on set with this specific star, and they dress them and blah, 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 blah. So they might be authorized to take the picture of the two of them, but they can't post it until after the release of the actual piece, so the film or the TV show, whatever it might be. But always ask for permission first.
Yes.
Ask the head of your...
Photo cleared.
Yep. Ask the head of your department or whoever your direct supervisor is beforehand. Say, hey, listen, is it okay if I do this? You had talked about taking pictures on set of your first day, but you would take it on the ground showing your feet.
Yeah.
There are places where that is a complete violation, because you are not allowed to actually take pictures, period. So find out what that is before you move forward.
It's in your NDA. Like, that is part of what is in your NDA. One of the things you should assume that is proprietary is everything that the production has created. So sets, costumes, props, creatures, anything that they have built, created for this filming, you assume that those things are going to be a no-go when it comes to pictures.
Even camera setup, because sometimes, a cinematographer might have a proprietary way of specifically shooting that is just theirs. I have seen that. Like, it's like they have a specific track that they use that they don't want anybody to see because that's how they get their specific shot. But if you end up taking a picture and you're just doing a selfie and it's in the background and somebody recognizes those things, that can be a violation of your NDA. You're looking at scripts, you're looking at anything that anybody makes or talks about that is related to the production is usually proprietary information that is protected by the NDA. You do not want to violate that.
And it's also, there is a safety element to it where thinking about where you are on location, a lot of these NDAs are to help try and prevent looky-loos and people showing up trying to talk to the actors, press, and just general excited fans will show up at stages, and it just causes a lot of stress and logistical problems. And so even taking a picture like outside of a stage where there's nothing but the stage number, door, etc., if people can see, and I have said that I am on XYZ show, and then there is a picture of me at these stages, people, especially if my socials are public, which they are not anymore, but if they are public, they can put those two and two together. And let me tell you, fans will put two and two together very, very fast and show up, and they will try to meet these people, try to get an autograph. And so just paying attention to that, like, I never put location tags on any of my posts ever in a million years because I don't want somebody to be able to find me in general, but especially when I'm filming, because what if they show up to set and then they become a problem for everyone I'm around?
And then the worst thing, too, is not only do they show up to set, but they show up to set and say, well, I saw it on Gabriella's Instagram account. And you're like,
yeah, now I'm in trouble. Even though it was completely innocuous, it was just a location tag that gave it away. Typically, I don't post anything about a production that is specific to the production unless it has been released by the production. So a lot of the articles that come out of like announcements of film or whatever, that it's got so-and-so actors. Once the production has released the information, I use that as my kind of line in the sand that I now can also release that information. But I wait for that to happen.
On some of my productions, I have had production managers create a like photo circle, kind of like sharing things. So any of the behind the scenes photos that people take, that they're authorized to take, you have to send it to the production manager or you upload it directly to the link that they give you in this photo circle. And then they go through and they will pull the pictures and say, these ones are allowed and these ones are not.
Yeah.
And then they also let you know, hey, you can post these behind the scenes photos at such and such point of time. So,
there's also that, I've done that many times too, or had that on my productions. And one of the things that you're not thinking of when you're thinking of your really cool shot is who else is in it. And if you catch one of the name actors in all of their deal memos, they have a right to photo approval. And so if you release a picture where so-and-so looks like in the back, like far, far background, you're not paying any attention to it because you're over here with like your walkie taking a cool photo, but that can cause legal problems for the actual production because the actor and their team and their legal will get involved because they signed a contract on this show that they have the right to approve every single image of them that is released.
Yeah. So pay attention to it. Don't violate it. You'll have a great shoot. So we also have 5 releases that PAs typically utilize.
Maybe ask to get signatures.
Yeah. Right. So you have an appearance release. You also have a background release. We also have a materials release, a location release, and a minor release. So what are all these releases? Appearance release. An appearance release is typically used in documentary style or reality television. It can be used in other formats, but this is what it's typically for because they're usually experts that show up and they're being interviewed and you're allowing your likeness or they're allowing you to utilize their likeness, their image, who they are in this program or in this film or whatever.
Like a narrative scenario, they're signing like a cast long form deal memo, etc. It's different because they're paid actors.
Yeah, and that would typically be handled by the casting department. But for the appearance release, this could also be for like in reality television. One of the stars brings their best friend to set because they're going to do a scene together and they're talking about going out and partying, whatever it might be. But, when they show up, they probably more than likely aren't getting an appearance fee. And so they'll sign the appearance release. And the appearance release is separate from an NDA. So you might be asked to have them sign both an NDA and an appearance release.
Yeah.
But the appearance release says, you're allowed to use my image for this specific purpose. So it is for this television show or this, film. And then it gives you the rights of the usage. So that is where it's allowed to be shown. Yep. So it could be broadcast. It could be, social media. It can be, just theatrical, or it could be all media. And then it also gives you the length of time. So the terms being like, this is just for 6 months or 2 years or in perpetuity. So it lists out all those specific things. If you have any questions about what is on the appearance release that you do not understand, ask your supervisor, ask whoever gave it to you in the first place to explain, because a lot of times these people that are signing it are, not going to understand the legal jargon and say, what is this really about? What am I giving you authorization to do? So sometimes it'll say we can utilize your appearance in any type of promotional material that is associated with this and manipulate it in the way that we want for the specific program. So they may not authorize to do that. So just the appearance release is typically for the non-actors.
You're also not getting paid.
Yes. Like you end up interviewing a scientist about climate change, and they're the expert on it.
And one thing across all of these releases, legibility. Like, make sure that you can read what this person has put down, and go ahead and really strongly encourage them not just to put a signature, but to write down their name, like print it out so it is legible, and contact information. Whatever is on that form is there for a reason. They're not asking for information they don't need. It will bite someone in the butt like 6 months to a year later. And if you're the person that has gotten everything that they need, they will love you.
Yeah. And then also with an appearance release, find out from whomever gave you the task what the system is to obtain this release. So for instance, a lot of times with the appearance release, they'll need to take a photo of the person so that we can identify who they are when they're doing clearances in the end. They're looking at the episode or they're looking at the finished film. And they're like, hey, there's that person. Do we have a release for that specific person? So what they'll typically do is they'll have the release that they have signed and filled out. And in the top corner, there might be a number associated with it, but they'll have you take a picture with it, holding the release so that you can identify the person with the actual release. It makes things so much easier. So find out what the actual protocol is and what you need to do. Usually there's going to be a release PA or a key PA or somebody, a production coordinator, production manager, that will tell you exactly what the specifics are.
Yeah. All right. Background releases.
Yes.
So this is really across all media types for non-speaking background roles. And you will have, sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's digital. It kind of depends on the production and the amount of background that you have. But this is very similar. It is a background releasing their use of their image to the production for the film or whatever type of media that you're filming. Again, legibility is very important. A lot of times, background is being paid, and it is very difficult if their address becomes illegible. They may also fill out a W-9. They may have start work that they have to fill out. All of those things, if you are a background PA, just make sure that whoever's giving you that task, that you understand every single thing that needs to be filled out in order for them to... Well, so with background, that's probably the only people that are getting paid that you would also have to handle the paperwork. You are not handling their payment, but the systems that are used, there's some different online systems. That data will be collected by you and then put into a system that will then be approved by ADs and then go to background payroll. And so there will be more information that you would need to gather from a background performer than you would for an appearance release that is not being paid, because background are paid typically on these types of productions. And so always it's typically going to be one of your ADs that hands out that assignment. Just, hey, could you walk me through this? I want to make sure that I'm getting exactly the information that you need. If you are doing paper, make sure you take pictures of them because they will walk away. There is a background voucher, which you can Google and look at, like what a blank background voucher looks like. That is used to check out costumes, props, anything that a background performer might have and need to give back to the production. It also shows if, like, did they wear their own clothes? Do they get a bump for that in their payroll? Like, all of that, you are helping them log that to make sure that that transfers back to the office team that is processing it.
Yeah. And in reality and documentary to utilize background releases, sometimes people who say that you're filming in a restaurant, right? So it's a restaurant scene and, you know, somebody's going to confront somebody and they're going to throw glasses, whatever happens, you know, whatever show that might end up being. Sometimes people in the background don't want to be shown on camera. And so what you'll have to do is you can sometimes write it on the back of a paper or at the top of a release form. And you say, hey, can you just hold this really quickly? I'll take a picture so we know to blur you, keep you out of that, just so that you have some kind of a documentation.
Yeah.
But making sure that you document all of these processes as well. So if you have a scanning app that you can scan it and, you know, make it into a PDF, that's amazing. That's something that's super duper helpful. But even just taking a photo of the actual release is really important because you never know what can happen. A big gust of wind could come along, knock all the releases out of your hand after you've gotten everybody to sign it. And then that person that was in the background that's showing up in an important scene, they are gone by that point in time. And you have no record of it. At least if you take a picture, you have that as a record.
And I mean, they filled it out. You're like, great. Snap that picture before you file it, before anything happens, because water damage, rain, like I cannot tell you the amount of times, one, that it happens, like, and the PA has to go back and do it a second time, and that becomes your problem. Or 6 months later, they're going through clearances and they don't have everything they need. And then it becomes a big financial problem on production, and they're less likely to rehire you for that position if it wasn't done in the first place. And things happen, fall through the cracks all the time. You having a backup on your phone, it makes everything better. And you are then able to be like, oh yeah, that was lost. Great. I definitely have that in a folder on my phone. Let me go find it, etc.
Yeah. And there's sometimes situations where the place is too big. So say that you're filming at like a state fair or an event, you'll end up putting up a cable cast sign. It is an area release that has information on it that says, if you go past this point, you authorize us to film you because X, Y, and Z film production is happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will refuse, sometimes they won't, you know, whatever it might be. But if the sign gets put up, you usually are asked to take a picture of the actual sign in the location.
Entrance.
Yes, so that it showcases that you've actually done it and that people are aware. So if anybody has any problems like, hey, I didn't know that I was in the background. Well, guess what? There was a sign that was out there. You might have missed it, but you passing through that authorizes them to utilize your likeness in the background.
Every single thing that you see on screen has a legal document attached to it. The music, the art, the sets that are built, every single person that shows up, every single thing has to have a legal document saying that it is able to be used for this production, or it cannot be used and will be sued. This is where a lot of money is involved, which is why, although it's just a little piece of paper, it is really important to the success of the project. So when you are doing these releases, it is a very important job. It is boring, and you're probably going to roll your eyes and be like, I don't want to be that person. But like, you are contributing to the success of this project in a very big way. And so it's important to make sure things are legible and organized and that you have pictures of them that can be turned into PDFs.
Yep. So as she said, everything that appears on screen needs a release, and that includes the filming location where you will be. Now, typically the location manager or location department handles all these types of things. However, there are instances in which a PA is required or asked to go ahead and take care of a location release. One of those things might be the time of day has changed, the light has moved, and you have to pivot your camera just a little bit, and this corner of a store might show up that you do not have a location release for, that the location department didn't get because it wasn't part of the initial ask. So somebody might say, hey, can you run this over, have the location, sign it. Now, when you go there, the person that signs it has to be authorized. So it is usually the building owner, not just the business owner, because some
renter.
Yeah. Sometimes the renter will be separate from the actual owner. Just go in there, ask, hey, I need whoever is authorized to go ahead and sign this release to sign it. The building owner or,
Owner,
whoever, whatever it might be.
property owner.
Mm-hmm. But if it's also somebody that is renting from the space, so say that it's somebody that has a lease for the property, they have their own mom and pop ice cream shop, but the building is owned by somebody else, you would need both those signatures, because you would need the signature from the ice cream place saying that you can utilize that location, and also the person that owns the building. So two separate things. More than likely, you won't get into that kind of situation, because if it gets that detailed,
it should go to location.
It'll go to
your responsibility is not to go down this rabbit hole of finding this person. Your responsibility is to get the information. Say, do you have the contact information? If they're not willing to give you the contact information, then you get their contact information, and then you take it back to the person that gave you the task and report all of that. Make sure that it is written down on the back of the release or whatever. Take a photo before you even walk back across the street, and then hand that off and say, this is the circumstance, this is what's happened, this is where, all the information that I have gathered, and let them chase it, because that is an entire department's job.
Yeah. And make sure that you get these releases before you start filming. Why do you ask that, Brandon? Oh, why do you say that? Well, the reason being is because if you film the entire scene and it is going into the final edit, and that location release or that, background or appearance release has not been signed before it goes to air, they might try to track down those people and they might refuse. That means that whole shot,
or ask for a ton of money.
Yeah, or they just, if they ask for a ton of money, that's horrible. But at least you can get them to sign, because the worst case scenario is somebody turning around and saying, absolutely not, and that means that whole day has been scrapped, and that means that there's a reshoot. And guess who it falls down on? The person that was asked to get the release signed.
Yeah, and the whole day waste is not necessarily on your shoulders, but you are a part of a bigger machine, and we want to avoid wasting thousands upon thousands of dollars because one release was not signed.
Yeah. And so like the typical location release would just say, we authorize this production company to utilize this location and its likeness, this property, whatever it might be. That's pretty much what a standard location release would say.
Well, there will be some blanks, and we are going to have examples of all of these for you guys to look over, download, and have for your own just knowledge. But there are usually blanks where you can write in details of what is being allowed and not. And, if a homeowner is nervous, it's like, write down, we are only filming the exterior from across the street. There is no access. You don't need to use the driveway. We don't need power. We're not going inside, et cetera, et cetera. Like, all of the details that make them comfortable, put those down, unless you have been expressly told to ask for. We need, I've had ones that we got our location release and paid them $100 because we needed to park something in their driveway, whatnot. Typically, you as a PA are not going to be asked to handle releases that involve money and negotiations, because that is quite literally above your pay grade and should not be your job. If there is hey, could you pay hand $100 to this person, write it down, so we can use their driveway to back up this thing in, whatever, that might be a scenario. Honestly, probably the only thing I would see PAs being handled.
Yeah.
And that will be written and very detailed. This is the specific task.
Yes.
Involving money that I need you to do. Here's the $100 cash. We need this signed.
Yeah. And as far as locations are concerned, the majority of things are going to be handled by the location department. Those releases are typically handled by the department, because it'll show the specific shoot day, all of the information that Gabrielle had said, like interior, exterior, whether you're actually allowed to film on the property, what you can and cannot do. You can't take things off the walls. You can't shoot inside. You can't step on foot on property, whatever it might be. As a PA, they may ask you to help out with locations and prepping or something that might happen. Sometimes when you're getting permits, depending on where you're shooting, what city, what state, what county, they all have different permit regulations that you might be asked to do notification letters. And so these notification letters usually provided by the production, and then all you got to do is just distribute them to the houses around the actual place or the businesses.
Typically give you like a map of like, okay, 6 blocks from your filming location here, or this road closure, all of these streets that are going to be impacted, they all get it. You'll have a map and know exactly where you need to go. One thing to note is that it is illegal to open a mailbox. You can't put anything in anybody's mailbox. You can tape it to the outside of, as a filming notice, or tape it to the outside of their like screen, glass door, whatever, somewhere that they will see it and most likely, interact with that, because the goal is that we are helping people not get upset and be shocked when their lives are disrupted because there are 12 trucks and 400 people milling around down their neighborhood.
Yeah. So typically you bring a roll of tape and you tape it to their door, or, they might have like a little knob that you can knock on and you stick it underneath there, and the weight of that holds it. Sometimes they'll request for you to write down all of the different address numbers, all the different buildings or houses, so that you notate, all right, it's been delivered to these places. And then sometimes they ask for the homeowner or the business owner's signature to authorize, saying that I have received this notification and I am allowing this production to move forward, because sometimes that is actually what is needed in order to get the permit. The authorization.
So a lot of times permits usually go through like a local office, and they will get police and fire and like all the different civic department involved. And they will say, okay, well, there are 4 houses that if we say yes to this, they are going to be cut off from the road because of that. Those 4 people have to know and consent, because this is going to interrupt their life. And so that is when it might get more kind of intense and you have to go knock on doors. I will say, if you're hired for this, going with the all black, sweat wicking, film, grunge look may not be the best thing to do when you're interacting with the general public. Looking happy and approachable is great.
Yeah, definitely. And then so all the other things that happen in the background, you have artwork that shows up in the scene, or, music, whatever it is, those are materials. So that would require a materials release. Now, if you're looking at music rights and stuff like that, that is handled by a completely separate department. There is more than likely you're never going to see those things. But a typical materials release that deals with logos, artwork, tattoos. I worked on a show that dealt with tattoos, and we had to get materials releases not only from the tattoo artist, because it's the art that they created, but we had to get materials release and an appearance release from the person that was being tattooed, because their skin was considered as the canvas. So they're a walking canvas, so they are the walking piece of art. So they have to authorize that. You could also be filming and on a street, and in the background is some graffiti by a graffiti artist.
Yeah.
And it might have their actual tag on there, or their, social media handle. You have to contact them to authorize to utilize that in the background. Great example. This is a really good example. And I think I could use, I'm not violating anything because it was in the news.
Okay.
So
we have to check on our own NDAs.
Yes. So this really did happen. There's a place in Miami called Wynwood, and it's like an arts district, and the entire area is just covered in graffiti. And these are actual artists that are commissioned to do this art. I mean, it's all over the place. And American Eagle did a shoot there and did not get authorization for, and it was this drawing of an eyeball, and these lashes coming out of an eyeball, and there's a whole bunch of them in the background. And graphically, it's beautiful. It's a great place to shoot like high fashion or even American Eagle, I worked with them. I love working with them. But what happened was they took that artwork, and not only was it just displayed in the background in some of the images, commercials, all of that stuff, but they took the graphic eye and they made it into a gift card. So it was
without authorization.
So that ended up in the news. That ended up in the news, and there was a whole lawsuit. But yeah, you can get into some serious situations. So the materials release, what it does is it authorizes you to utilize that artwork or that material, the logo, whatever it might be, for the terms that are specified within that contract. Now, if it gets to usage rights, like it can only be used in this territory and, for this duration, that ends up going to either art department, producers, art buyer, whoever the point contact might be.
It's not your job.
That is typically not your job. And that also ends up like having these very, very specific contract negotiations between X brand and the production. So like you're typically not going to, be asked to do a materials release or a location release for something like an Exxon station, because those are huge corporations that
Big negotiations that take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of legal, like their legal would be involved, production's legal, like that's the whole thing. That is not on you. What you're going to more typically use a materials release for is like, we're doing XYZ and now we see this logo across the street. We just need to make sure it's cleared. Like, can you run over there and see if they'll sign a materials release? If it's a no, then that kicks up to other people and then they can handle that and get involved, or it'll be blurred out. But that's typically where you're going to be asked to handle that.
Yeah.
And our last release is a minor release. So there are an entire set of rules, first by SAG as a union, around working with minors, and also by each state. There are a different set of rules around minors working and minors working in entertainment specifically. And those releases for every single, whether or not they are SAG, whether or not they are, a casted background person or not, if they're a minor, they have to have their guardian sign the paperwork on their behalf. And so if you're seeing like so-and-so kid gets dropped off somewhere, that parent that dropped them off, they should be with them. One, that should be a thing. And two, like that parent has to sign the paperwork. The child is unable to sign any of the paperwork. And most people know this about the industry, parents that are like parents of child actors, etc. But if you're getting into more reality docuseries, etc., that's not necessarily something that they think about. They're like, oh yeah, it'd be cool for my 15-year-old to sit here and do this thing and be behind this thing. And I'm like, this child is not allowed to do that. And so you have to get that filled out by there's guardian.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to children or minors on set. It might be a minor release, but it could be a major problem. No, so like, depending on their age. So like, up to 6 months, they're only allowed to be on set for like 30 minutes. And then they have to have an hour break. There's different rules and regulations. If they're school age, they have to have an on-set tutor or a teacher.
Or during school hours. Mm-hmm. While school is in session, but like summer is different, and also their nighttime. So there's a whole set of rules that the AD team tracks, the production itself tracks to make sure they are in compliance. And if you're interested, you can Google those and read them on set. It is wild. There's a lot of detail and a lot of things to memorize, but it's very important to keep kids safe. I would say like typically they should have a guardian on set, and you typically have some type of like studio teacher or advocate, state representative, person.
Yeah.
Here in the state of Georgia, they're called a CLC, and you have to go through like a training program and pay a fee to become
child labor coordinator.
A child labor coordinator. That's what it is. I was like, it's CLC, and it don't remember how much it costs. But anyway, but yeah, those are things. So if you're on a shoot and there are children and you don't see these types of protections, that should be a red flag about the production itself, and also something that you can, raise that question.
Yeah, a lot of times, when it comes to minors on set, especially contracted one, casting department will end up handling that. Yeah. But knowing how these releases operate and what goes into them, you might be interested in going from a PA into a child wrangler. Mm-hmm. And a kid wrangler, I've done it before. Listen, I've been called so many times because they're like, oh my God, you're so good with kids. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm just basically a big kid myself. But it's a really, really awesome job. So if you're interested in that, look it up. They make sure that the kids are taken care of. And, especially in photography, they're entertained while they're on set. So you might have like a 2-year-old that's not understanding directions, like stand and pose. So you have a child wrangler who will mirror to the child what they're supposed to be doing, keep them entertained. Hey, look over here. And they usually have like toys and props and all this other kind. It's a really, really cool job, and it pays really well. So if that's something that interests you, look it up.
Yeah. So when it comes to all of these releases, let's talk about the most important thing: collecting, documenting, naming, and uploading. Nomenclature is both my favorite thing and my least favorite thing, depending on if you do it right or not, meaning how you name the files. And hopefully the production has a nomenclature system of we need episode first, then name, type of release, date, etc., whatnot. If they don't, it's a great idea to ask if you can, suggest one. Like, would you prefer me do it XYZ way or ZYX way as I name these things for you? Like, what makes sense? That question alone will make me hire you again.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how important that is, because I, as somebody much higher up that is on the production for longer, will be searching through the files that you have collected for months on end. And if I can find things easily, and if I do not have to rename them myself, my goodness, you have job security.
Yeah, because if I go in there and I see IMG_6792, IMG_6793, I can't even speak because I'm so frustrated just thinking about it. Every time I think about this, it just gets me, my hands start sweating, I get frustrated. Yeah. Or also scan 17992340000.pdf. First of all, understand what the file extension is going to be, what format that they want it to be saved as.
They want a photo, a JPEG,
PNG, wherever.
PDF is standard. If they don't tell you, it's PDF.
Yeah, and like if you're taking a picture of somebody holding a release, do they want that as a photo, or do they want that as a PDF as well?
And do they want it combined with their actual release file or not? Because different reasons for different things. So always ask that question.
Yeah, so understanding the organizational structure and the file folder system is essential to keeping these things perfectly organized, because at the very, very end, when we send it to clearances, they have to be able to reference these things very, very easily. And they don't want to tack on like extra days and running around trying to find releases or locating them because they're put in the wrong file system, the wrong folder, or they're named incorrectly, whatever it might be. So just first ask what the proper protocol is for naming convention, also for where to put them and the file type. Those are very, very important.
This is me if I was a background PA, all the way up to me now as a line producer who sometimes randomly gets handed pieces of paper by crew members on set because they know I will get them to the office somehow. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it does happen. I will take said piece of paper and snap a photo of it immediately, because the amount of water stains, rain, wind, snow, dirt, things that happen that destroy paper, it happens every single day. Every single day on a shoot, some piece of paper is destroyed. Is it important? Is it not? That's a toss-up. But like, take the picture immediately before even moving on to the second person who has a different piece of paper. I take the picture. Especially if you're dealing with a large group of people and like maybe you're a background PA and you have 100 different background forms that you need to review, make sure they're legible, and take pictures. Go ahead and take all your pictures. And then when you have downtime, once all of those are on set and you're just kind of hanging out, go back through your pictures. You can move them into one of the free like scanner apps, turn them into PDFs, and do the correct nomenclature, and then either turn them into a zip file, or if they've already given you access to like upload them to this Google Drive or this Dropbox, etc., like put them in that format and then send them off. That would be, again, job security.
I mean, listen, it's one of the things that I love as a producer, and it's also my biggest pet peeve. Like, organization is so important because you don't know what people are having to do after you've wrapped filming and post-production. They need to be able to access this information quickly and know where to find it. Otherwise, you end up in delays, and that costs extra money. And then it's like, who was the person that did all this? Who did it wrong?
And if you're actually uploading it to a drive or to a Dropbox, like, there are receipts. I, as somebody who has come in and cleaned up a bunch of productions at the end to get them ready for distribution, I can see who was the last person that uploaded it. And if it's something that like, oh, this was filmed in the same town that I'm now in, or I'm going to film in that town, and I see somebody who did a really great job, I'll be like, I would like, can I find their information? Can I talk to this production about who this person was? Because this is gold. And that is, again, when I say job security, I am not saying that lightly at all. That alone will make me hire someone. Because I trust them to handle the paperwork that is vital to us being able to release the movie and make money.
Absolutely. So, in the end, if you don't understand what the release says, ask your supervisor, ask your production coordinator, your key PA, whoever gave you the task in the first place to explain what this piece of paper means. If they don't know, they can find out the information. But just make sure that you are equipped with understanding what the releases are, what the protocol is for collecting these releases, what information goes into them, and how to file it. And if you can do that, you're going to stay very well employed. And in fact, people that do that really, really well move up the ladder so fast. And
you're going to have to say no to promotions because you're like, oh, no, I really want to be in art department. They're like, no, we need you in the production office. We need to promote you tomorrow.
And then also you just explain a situation where it's like, you look at old files from, a previous shoot that somebody had done in a similar location, and you see how great it was organized. What could happen, too, is that you find out who the PA was for that was handling all the releases. You call them up, and you're like, hey, are you available? And they're like, actually, I'm at UPM now. You're like, oh, great. They will then have a roster of PAs that they know have the same set of skills as they do, because that's just how it operates. All of the PAs that I recommend to people, they are going to be very well organized, because I will never co-sign to somebody that is not organized.
I will happily pass on, like, hey, I don't know, I have not worked with this person, but like they say they're available, but I'm like, I trained this person. That is a completely different recommendation. Like, they know my system, immediate hire.
USDA approved.
So, yeah. But I mean, it means they know nomenclature, they know protocol, they know releases, like they know how to organize and file things and work in that system. And in any system, like if you understand how to organize things, it goes a very long way.
If you don't know, just ask.
Yeah.
This was Understanding NDAs and the 5 most used types of releases. Up next, set safety questions and guidelines.